Hello, BookTube. I've got a little mail for you today. Some books in the mail that we can look at, and we can open them together and talk about them. Of course, I don't call it a part of the haul wars that are currently roiling through BookTube because I don't need to. I'm like the North during the American Civil War. I have vast, vast untapped resources. There's never any doubt who's going to win. We've got some packages here. Let's see what we have. See if there's anything squeal worthy, see if there's anything really of interest. Let's see what this first one is. Oh, okay, this is the finished copy of something that we've already seen. This is by Robert Garland. This is What to Expect When You're Dead, an ancient tour of death and the afterlife. This is the finished copy of something we've already seen. This comes out in early April. Let's see here. What do we have for pub sheet? We can try to outrun, outsmart, or simply turn away from death. But as the author reminds readers in this book, studies prove everyone dies eventually. And while contemporary healthcare and technologies keep death in the distance, for some in centuries past it was omnipresent. In a wry and revealing tour of death rituals in the ancient world, the author surveys across cultures and traditions: Mesopotamia, Egyptian, Hindu, Jewish, Zoroastrian, Etruscan, Greek, Roman, early Christian, Islamic, and draws on the latest scholarship across ancient archaeology, art, literature, and funerary inscription, inviting us to imagine what it must have been like to experience dying and death in the ancient world. Along the way, he shows how much and indeed how little has changed as individuals explored questions like how to achieve a good death and afterlife, what's the best way to dispose of a body, do the dead face a post-mortem judgment, and where do they end up? Yes, that's true. All of those cultures have wondered about that stuff because it beats facing reality. No matter what your religious system is or your cultural system is, those kinds of questions, arguing about them endlessly, fighting with each other about them endlessly, beats facing reality. Definitely. Which is that you are an animal. You are a biological organism. You are an animal no different than any other animal on Earth. You squash a ladybug or hit a squirrel with your car on the way to work, you don't wonder about the immaterial but perfect duplicate of that creature that goes to some afterlife and lives forever. No, you don't think that. You don't think it for a minute. Instead, you look at it and you say, that thing was alive and now it's not. And that's it. End of story. But humans cannot accept that being true for themselves. They simply fundamentally cannot accept that, even though it's self-evident. Your personality, your memory, your thoughts, everything is your brain. Those aren't contained anywhere else. Those are in your brain. In the soft tissues, the very delicate soft tissues of your brain, that with neurons firing all the time in incredible complexity, fed constantly. The brain is a very high resource drain on the body, especially the human brain, which is enormous and enormously complex, which is why brains like this don't evolve all that often, because it's a real gamble with your environmental factors. To devote this much of the body's resources to one organ that isn't immediately useful for survival is a big gamble. But all of that neural activity is fed by oxygen-rich blood pumped by your heart, a muscle in your chest. Your blood is not pumped by anything else. And that oxygen-rich blood is absolutely necessary for your brain to stay in business. That heart stops pumping blood, the blood stops going to the brain, and the brain starts to darken in minutes. In minutes. And it's not that it darkens in the way that an old floppy disk darkens, and if you can just find the right computer, you can slip it in the slot and it will reboot. No. It darkens in the way that it vanishes in the way that a negative on a film plate or a piece of film does. A lot of you probably don't know what film is. But once upon a time, you took pictures on a camera with film, a celluloid strip that received the photons. And you had to develop that in the dark, in a dark room. And if you exposed those negatives to light, to bright white visible light, the images went away. The film was still there, and that is in a way true with the brain. Parts of it stick around for a while, but the images are all gone. The content is all gone. You are all gone the minute that happens. And that's it. End of story. Those images don't go anywhere else. They don't get transposed into an immortal body. There's no you. There's no part of you that isn't part of that process. You don't live in your body. You are your body. So there's nothing after at all. It's all about how you live now. That's all that it's about. This is not as an old friend of mine used to say, life is not a dress rehearsal. But anyway, the similarities between all of those cultures because of that underlying fear will be fascinating to read about. I have this thing, the advanced copy. I just haven't read it yet. Well, let's push on before we run out of energy here, before we run out of steam. Let's see what this next one is. See if there's something really squeal worthy for the weekend would be great. What is this next one? Oh my. Oh, okay. How interesting. All right, this is coming out in early August. This is A Day Like Any Other, The Life of James Schuyler by Nathan Kernan, the American poet. The long-awaited definitive biography of the mercurial, troubled, brilliant poet. A Pulitzer Prize winner who, along with Frank O'Hara, Barbara Guest, John Ashbery, and Kenneth Koch, helped to shape the New York School of Poetry in the 1960s. About whom John Ashbery wrote, "To reread him is to live as though life were an experience one had just forgotten and been newly awakened to." Thanks. That's great. I really know what you mean by that. It's so clear what you mean by that. And Ben Lerner wrote in Paris Review that this poet possesses a kind of soft Midas touch in which everything his eye alights on becomes art. I can think of two things at the very least that his eyes alighted on that did not become art. But the less said about them, the better. Of interest alongside his verse are the fascinating facts of his biography. This book not only allows us to explore the poet's life and grant us new insights into his poetry, but also show how imbricated he was in the post-war world of arts and letters. A publicist in a pub sheet actually used the word imbricated. I'm in love. Appearing alongside his New York School fellow poets, there is Auden, whose secretary the poet was, Fairfield Porter, whose family the poet lived with for over a decade, to name a few. Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll be dealing with this figure in Poetry Thursdays on this channel. I don't think it's much of a secret what I think of his art, so-called. But a big biography, I'm all for it. This is going to be $35. And no page count is given, but it looks like about 500. So there you go. A Poet's Life. How interesting. Okay. Coming out in August. So, I mean, I will read it, and there's a letter collection. This guy did a letter collection of Schuyler's letters. I'll do that as well. And, of course, he is written about in a ton of books that I have here. A ton of them. Reviews of his work, but also interviews, personal essays, that sort of thing. I don't think I'm going to need to go to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston and get a collected poetry. There's nothing in the poetry, so I don't think I need to do that. But I can do a lot of ancillary reading before I get to August. Great. Fantastic. Fantastic. I don't have to like the artwork to like a new artist's biography. So let's see this next one. It's one of these cardboard things that you have to tear apart. Okay. What is your paperwork? Oh, gross. invoice. I don't need an invoice. All right, so I don't appear to have any paperwork for you. Why is that? Well, let's look at it together. So it must be new. It must be out now or soon. This is Low April Sun by Constance Squires. This is the finished copy, so let's just read the dust jacket together and see what it is. On the morning of April 19th, 1995, Delaney Travis steps into the Social Security office in Oklahoma City to obtain an ID for her new job. Oklahoma City, 1995. Moments later, an explosion shatters the Murrah Federal Building to rubble. Yes, the Oklahoma City bombing. Her boyfriend Keith and half-sister Edie are left to assume the worst, that Delaney perished in the bombing despite definitive proof. 20 years later, now married and bonded by the tragedy, Edie and Keith's lives are upended when they begin to receive mysterious Facebook messages from someone claiming to be Delaney. Desperate for closure, the couple embarks on separate journeys, each aiming for an artist community in New Mexico that may hold answers. Alongside their quest is August, a recovering alcoholic with a haunting connection to the bombing. Raised in a separatist compound of Elohim City, August harbors secrets about Timothy McVeigh, the perpetrator of the attack, and his own possible involvement in the tragedy. When his path crosses with Edie, he must choose whether to tell anyone about his past. Oh, so this is an Oklahoma City novel. I think I might have been notified about this by the publisher. As the 20-year anniversary of the bombing approaches, fracking-induced earthquakes shake the ground of Oklahoma City, mirroring the unsettled lives of its residents. There's a lot going on in that sentence, isn't there? So who's this author? Constance Squires is the author of Live from Medicine Park, which won the 2012 Oklahoma Book Award. I didn't know there was an Oklahoma Book Award. How interesting. And Hit Your Brights is another one of her books. Her short stories have been published in The Atlantic, Guernica, The Dublin Quarterly, Shenandoah, Identity Theory, and Rolling Stone 500. And she teaches creative writing at the University of Central Oklahoma. Okay. All right. So the only thing that's missing there is a date. I guess I'm going to assume that this is out already. I don't know how many of you remember the Oklahoma City bombing, 1995. How many of you remember the Oklahoma City bombing? And the shameful tiny little codicil to it, the shameful flirting that an old and I wish that were an excuse I could make. I can't, though. An old and morally decrepit Gore Vidal did with Timothy McVeigh from prison. He riots in his praise. My gorge rose when I read that line in Vanity Fair, I think, or something like that. My gorge rose. I wanted, when that whole sick story that Vidal later assembled all that correspondence into a book. When that whole sick story was unfolding, I wanted to just beat the bushes of the publishing world. Find somebody who can tell me Vidal's mailing address and just send him a picture every day of the devastation of the bomb and all the people who died. Anyway. All right, so an Oklahoma City bombing book. And then the last thing here, we have a box. Nice, always nice to have a box. Let's see if we can get it open. Let's see what this is. Could be something big and meaty. That would be nice. Another invoice. Don't want any invoices. Packing material. Oh, fantastic. Great. Oh, all right, good. Sorry, having trouble here. You don't come here for great video content, though. All right, so this came out in January, so this is late getting to me, and it's a naked hardcover, which I was not anticipating. This is by Howard Jones, and it is Eyes on the Stars and Feet on the Ground: The Foreign Policy of Theodore Roosevelt. Just a naked hardcover here. It's a $30 hardcover from Rowman and Littlefield. I'm guessing that this won't be in your bookstores, or that it's come and gone since it's now, mid-March. But let's see what we have here. Keep your eyes on the stars and keep your feet on the ground, reads a plaque near the gravesite of Theodore Roosevelt, America's 26th president. During his tumultuous 7.5 years in the White House, Roosevelt boasted that his administration had combined ideals and reality to take a leading role in maintaining global peace. In this book, the late Howard Jones, one of the most distinguished historians of American foreign relations of his generation, highlights the path to peace that Roosevelt had begun to develop shortly before becoming president and tried to implement throughout his White House tenure. For his efforts to end the Russo-Japanese War, he was the first American and one of only two 20th century presidents to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. By exploring the influence that Roosevelt's private life had on public services, Jones presents a broader understanding of what will appeal to readers beyond specialists in U.S. foreign relations. What has this author written? University of Alabama research professor emeritus, author of numerous books and articles on U.S. foreign relations. Mutiny on the Amistad, The Bay of Pigs. Okay, he wrote a book on the Bay of Pigs that I think I read. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I read that. I'll have to check and see. I'm sure that I have at least one of his books here. And like I mentioned, I think I've mentioned this book already on this channel. This is a rarity. This is a study of Theodore Roosevelt that's not dumb, which is rare. Books there's no shortage of books about him, but they're usually Bully and San Juan Hill without really looking at the nuts and bolts of the man. Unfortunately, that tends to be true. It tends to be true about McKinley too. I mean, one good biography in 100 years, and let's not even talk about Roosevelt's successor, William Howard Taft. Let's not even talk about him. Usually, these figures are poorly served by intelligent, detailed history. So I'm glad to see this. A little late getting to me, so I will put it on the pile for tonight. So there we go. We have eyes on the stars and feet on the ground. Low April sun. A day like any other, a full-dress biography, and what to expect when you're dead. I can tell you, I can give you the spoiler for that. Nothing. You expect nothing. You are going to sleep without dreaming forever. You're not going to wake up. You're not going to end up anywhere. Here's where you are. But anyway, that's a little mail. Just extra. Just college students held in reserve. They'll never be called to the front. They won't need to be. Anyway, I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.